Chauffeurs who drive around rich people, what are some of the weird, shocking conversations you have overheard?
About 25 years ago I had a summer job at a very tony country club. 6-figure joining fee, 5-figure continuing membership dues, and that got you nothing but the privilege of paying top dollar for rounds, food, etc. I was a porter some of the time, as we had cottages on club grounds for members to stay and make a weekend of it. One of my duties was driving members to and from airports, usually private airports for private jets. One time I'm driving 2 guys to the airport, and one of them starts complaining. Seems he and his wife are always fighting over who gets the jet every weekend, and where they want to go. Well, the other one replied, my third jet is actually just gathering dust right now, since my son went to college. Wanna take it off my hands? They shook on it right there in the van.
He thought I couldn't speak French, heard him telling his wife on the telephone where she should order a strap-on.
When we were in high school, my friend used to caddy at a local country club. One guy really liked him and asked if he would be willing to drive him around while he went out partying. This was like 2003 and in a pretty rural area. My friend agreed. He picked the guy up at like 8 p.m. Right off the bat, the guy handed him $200. He went to a bar for a little bit. My friend sat in the car. The guy came out, handed him another $200 and told him he had to visit his friend real quick. He went and got a bunch of coke. They went to another bar. He handed my friend another $100 and told him to look out the window and turn up the radio. He then blew several lines. He came out a couple hours later with a girl. He was married with kids. He handed my friend another $200 and they went back to her house. After they beep, he came out and asked to be taken to the beach. At this point it was like 2 to 3 a.m. My friend said that the guy slowly walked around the beach, went into the water up to his ankles, in his shoes, threw a bunch of rocks into the water and then sat in the sand for about 45 minutes. He came back to the car and asked to be driven home. When they got out of the car he hugged my friend and gave him $500 and asked him to never tell anyone what happened. None of us really believed my friend when this happened until the guy he drove got arrested for assault and possession of cocaine like 6 months later.
Friend of mine worked for an upscale concierge chauffeur service. His most memorable moment came when he lost Marie Osmond. Fairly simple gig, go to airport and pick up Marie Osmond, who was to be the featured entertainer at a private event. Plane comes in, he meets her, she has carry-on bag but her checked suitcase, containing her stage dresses and makeup, is missing. She is unflappable, though, asked to be taken to the nearest upscale mall. He does as instructed. She goes into a large upscale department store, selects 2 long sequin cocktail dresses and goes to the fitting room to try them on, without him, of course. Unfortunately, there are 2 entrances and exits to the fitting room, and Marie Osmond exits out through the other side and cannot find my chauffeur buddy, who is waiting patiently on the side she'd entered. 20 minutes passes. He thinks something has gone wrong, so he grabs a female manager and asks her to go into the fitting rooms and ask for Marie Osmond. The manager thinks she is being pranked and declines. Chauffeur buddy is in mini panic mode now, running wildly around the store asking random customers, have you seen Marie Osmond? Have you seen Marie Osmond? Store security is summoned and he is asked to leave the premises right now. He calls his employer and tells them he has lost Marie Osmond. The employer doesn't have her cell phone number but has her agent's number and he is not accepting calls. She has in the meantime taken a cab to the gig, thinking she has been forgotten. Lots of apologies eventually ensued and there were no repercussions.
I've had multiple people pay me handsomely to let them smoke weed in the car. Heard a French guy yelling at his wife that $10,000 was too much to pay for 2 bracelets that she bought. Also overheard a lot business deals with absurd amount of money referenced. Like tens of millions.
Not a chauffeur, but seemed like a good chance to remind people of the story of John Boehner, at the time, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, third in line for the U.S. presidency, not knowing how to use Uber. As the story goes, one of his aides downloaded the app onto his phone and showed him how to use it. Unknown to him, he'd been stuck on the carpooling option, Uberpool. That's what he used for years. There are all sorts of tales of commuters hopping into their carpool and bam, there's John Boehner stuck in a middle seat asking to get dropped off at the Capitol building. However you feel about his politics, I think that's pretty funny.
My dad was a chauffeur when I was younger and he told me of one story driving the director of a company down the road with the Blackpool illuminations in the company limousine. The director was standing up out of the sunroof with his arms out waving at people as he drove past. What the people on the street didn't know is that in the back of the limo there were 2 prostitutes blowing him.
Not sure if I qualify, but I did drive Uber Black for a while in NYC. Had a few interesting situations. One time I was driving a young woman and right before the destination she screamed for me to pull over. When I asked her what was wrong, she pointed to the couple that was kissing in front of the building. Apparently the man was her fiancé. She didn't get out, she didn't cry, but she did ask if I could take her back to where I picked her up. I'll never forget her face, it was the saddest face I have ever seen in person. Another time I was picking up a group of guys outside a club early in the morning, and as the first guy stumbled and a Glock fell out of his coat pocket. We just locked eyes and I said, "Hope that's not for me, haha." I was nervous and didn't really know what to do, say. Probably my favorite was picking up 2 college-age girls from what I can only assume was a party. They were very drunk, and the second girl was basically completely gone. They were going all the way to Ridgewood, which was almost an hour. Girl A was pretty talkative and funny, girl B looked to be completely passed out, sleeping and didn't move the whole trip. We made it to Ridgewood, and girl B sits up suddenly, looks around, opens the door, and vomits everywhere. She seemed fine after that, but I just kept thanking her for making it the whole way and not throwing up all over my car.
Not a chauffeur, and I was a participant in this conversation. I used to tutor an oligarch's daughter in Rublovka, the wealthy suburb outside Moscow. One day she mentioned that she likes to ski. I asked her which kind of skiing she preferred. Downhill is more popular where I'm from, but cross-country is quite popular in Russia. It's even part of some schools' curricula. Her answer? My favorite kind of skiing is the type where you jump out of a helicopter. Silly me, I forgot about that kind.
I used to drive limousine and taxi. One time I got the manager of a fairly famous Canadian band in my car asking me where to buy coke. I had no idea where and I told him that, so his bright idea was to find a prostitute, hire her and ask her. I told him I couldn't help him pick up prostitutes either. He was disappointed but understood. He had me drive down a well-known street until he saw a prostitute. He asked me to pull over, got out of the taxi, paid the fare, and then immediately flagged me down again as a new ride. I knew what was up, but whatever. He gets back into the car with the prostitute and she tells him exactly what house to go to for some coke. I take them there and wait a bit, they come back out and I drive him back to the venue. Then he offers me 2 free tickets to the show, which I gladly accepted as loved that band and had seen them 3 times. Alas, since I was still working during the show, I gave them away to 2 friends who had never seen the band. They had a good time and I had a fun story to share with them about how I scored those tickets. Not really a shocking conversation and hardly a famous person, but it was interesting how easily and full of trust people can be about searching out and buying drugs in a strange city. For the record, this was 2003.
Buddy of mine ended up picking up a Netflix producer while doing Uber. He said they had a great conversation as he brought him to his hotel. The producer invited him up for a drink, and since my friend was a film student he thought it'd be a good idea to go and try to get some good networking in. They hung out for about an hour when he asked my friend if he knew of any massage places with happy endings. He didn't, but the guy paid him $500 to bring him to the closest massage place, which was only a few miles out. Upon dropping him off he gave my buddy a card and said, "There's a big party/festival I'm hosting. That's your ticket in. I'll let you know then if I get the happy ending, haha." He got the happy ending.
Drove LIMO at Marquette University during undergrad and grad school. Some of the students that went there were obscenely wealthy. Limos are the vans that drive drunk students anywhere on campus and a few blocks outside of campus. Couple things I remember randomly from it. Drunk guy leaves his wallet on a van and another driver calls it in so me and another supervisor can take it to campus police. We pick up the wallet from the driver and open it to get the student ID so they know who to email. There had to be a few grand in there, and when we called the kid to tell him about it he told us we could just keep it because it was too far from his dorm to bother picking up. I picked up a couple girls from Ohio and they spent the entire ride talking about how it was ridiculous that one of the girls' parents planned on making her pay for her own apartment after graduation and there was nothing even livable under $2,000 a month. The school is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Mardi Gras is the name of a campus ministry trip where you use your spring break to build houses and drink in somewhere that doesn't get snow in April. One of the people on my van was getting a free night of drinks from his buddies because he paid for everyone's trips. I think it was like $1,500 per person IIRC. Rich kids are rich, but foreign rich kids are usually on a different level. Was talking to a guy from Spain who said his dad did something with movies over there, IDK. He had an actual Rolex on and ended the conversation with, "So anyways, do you know where to find any meth? It is a free service and a frat star tried to pay me for the ride with a Ziploc baggie of cocaine." I said no and he called me a legend and left a $20 in the cup holder before I realized it.
I used to know a chauffeur, he ended up driving around some big stars. He was big dude, like 6 feet 8 inches and super muscular. His best story was when he was driving around a few WWE, WWF back then stars, and they awkwardly asked him to not get out and open the door for them because he'd make them look smaller.
This is not a limo story, but this thread reminded me of a rich guy story. My daughter played soccer for many years, and at one practice, a guy drove up in a Ferrari, got out, and started talking to another of the dads on the team. After a few minutes, the guy left and another of the dads went over there and asked him who that guy was. He replied that the guy was his lawyer or something. I come to find out years later, that guy in the Ferrari was a multimillionaire, had one and only one client, that dad. And his only job was to handle the dad's charitable donations. So this dude got filthy rich donating millions of dollars of somebody else's money and taking a percentage off the top. The dad, who was apparently worth several $100 million, never came across as rich at all. He wore sweats too and was at every practice and game. He drove a Camry. Had been married to his average-looking wife for like 25 years. Stuff like that. Acted like a normal guy like the rest of us.
Wasn't exactly a chauffeur, but I did have the distinguished privilege of working with a multimillionaire one time for a couple days, and I was just astounded at how out of touch he was with people. One conversation he was talking about how he hated all the new homes they were building and he liked old castles, so he was having a castle in Scotland disassembled and reassembled here in the US piece by piece. On another occasion he asked me why I wasn't in college yet. The job was after high school and I was working as a plumber, and gave me an "oh right" when I told him I couldn't afford to go yet and had to save up.
One of my best friends used to drive Uber in a wealthy area of LA. He told me so many stories about drunk celebs and TikTokers in his car. Someone offered him a bag of weed because they felt sorry for their friend throwing up in the back seat. Most people were just normal though. Some highlights. Quentin Tarantino and Trisha Paytas were making out in his back seat when they were secretly dating lol. Mike Tyson is apparently very nice in person and also a giant pothead. Somebody on Gossip Girl and her friend were arguing about chicken nuggets and tried to get him to go through a Wendy's drive-thru during the lunch rush when there were 10 cars already in line. Addison Rae or one of her friends took their shoes off and left them in the car. Leo DiCaprio took more than 5 minutes to find the car. He seemed out of it and was quietly bobbing his head listening to music on his headphones.
Not a chauffeur. A small part of my family was Chicago Mafia. Grandpa told me a story of a family wedding in Chicago they went to in the late 60s. They were picked up at the airport by a limo with some high-ranking family members. On the way to the hotel they were stopped about 8 times by various police officers. The officer would walk up to the driver's window. The chauffeur would reach into a money bag and pass a bill to the officer. Nothing would be said and they'd take off again. Eventually my grandpa asked if they were being bribed. His cousin, Mafia, laughed and said, "No, it's Thursday. That's when we pay our boys." So I guess that's how they did it. Looks like a traffic stop and in the open where it's not unexpected. So I'd imagine that chauffeur had seen some things.
I'll answer for my grandparents. They owned a limousine business, I believe in the early 2000s, and my grandmother drove Mel Gibson around. She said he was nice and that he had requested to sit in the front passenger seat due to car sickness.
Professional chauffeur here, I've never heard anything in my many years of driving.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.